What happens when a woman is sold like cattle to pay for a crime she didn't commit, forced to marry a warrior who sees her as the enemy? This isn't about romance. This is about survival, deception, and two people trapped in a web spun by men who profit from their pain. Stay until the end. This story will leave you breathless. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you'd fight or flee in this situation. Arizona Territory, 1876. Emma Clark didn't scream when they came for her. She stood in the doorway of her burned-out homestead, ash still warm beneath her boots, and watched 3 Apache warriors ride up with a white man in a cavalry coat leading them. 23 years old. Red hair like copper wire. Green eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. And hands that still smelled of smoke from burying her younger brother 2 hours earlier. The man in the cavalry coat dismounted. His name was Captain Aldridge, and his smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Miss Clark, you're a hard woman to find. What do you want?" Emma's voice came out flat, empty. "Justice," Aldridge replied. "Your father killed an Apache elder 3 weeks ago during a raid on a supply wagon. Shot him in the back while he was retreating. The tribe demands blood price." Emma's stomach dropped. "My father's dead. He died in Tucson 2 months ago. Pneumonia." "Convenient," Aldridge said. "But the debt doesn't die with him. Apache law is clear. When the guilty party is dead, the debt transfers to the nearest kin." One of the Apache warriors spoke in rapid, clipped English. "You are daughter. You pay." "I don't have money," Emma said, though she already knew money wasn't what they wanted. Aldridge's smile widened. "They don't want money, Miss Clark. They want a life for a life. But the council has shown mercy. Instead of execution, they'll accept. Let's call it servitude. You'll be given to one of their warriors as a wife. It satisfies the blood debt and maintains the fragile peace we've been negotiating." The ground seemed to tilt beneath Emma's feet. "That's not legal. You can't—" "Oh, but I can," Aldridge interrupted. "Under the Territorial Peace Act of 1875, Apache councils have legal jurisdiction over crimes committed against their people. Your father's actions nearly triggered a war. This arrangement prevents that. You should be grateful." "Grateful?" Emma's voice finally cracked. "My father was a drunk and a bastard, but I didn't shoot anyone. I was here, alone, trying to keep us fed while he drank himself to death in town." The warrior who'd spoken before dismounted. He was young, maybe 25, with black hair pulled back and eyes like obsidian chips. Scars marked his arms and chest, visible beneath traditional Apache clothing mixed with stolen cavalry pieces. "I am Naltz," he said, his English heavily accented but clear. "The elder killed was my uncle. Council says you become my wife. This ends the debt." Emma looked at him directly for the first time. No warmth in that gaze, no sympathy, just cold assessment, like she was a horse he'd been forced to accept in trade. "I won't," Emma said. Aldridge sighed theatrically. "Then you'll be executed at sundown. The choice is yours. Marry him and live, or die here beside your brother's grave. Personally, I'd choose life, but then, I'm an optimist." Emma's hands clenched into fists. She looked at the burned ruins of her home, at the fresh grave marker she'd hammered together from scrapwood, at the empty horizon that promised nothing but more suffering. She thought about her brother, 16 years old, dead from a fever she couldn't afford to treat, and now this. "How long?" she finally asked. "The marriage bond lasts 1 year," Aldridge explained. "After that, the debt is considered paid. You'll be free to go wherever you please." 1 year, 12 months, 365 days of what? She didn't even want to imagine. "And if I refuse to fulfill wifely duties?" Emma asked, forcing herself to meet Naltz's eyes. Something flickered across the warrior's face. Disgust, maybe, or anger. "I do not want white woman in my blankets," he said bluntly. "You work, you obey, you stay alive. That is all." It wasn't reassuring, but it was something. "Fine," Emma said. "I'll go." Aldridge clapped his hands together. "Excellent. See, cooperation benefits everyone. We'll have a small ceremony at the fort tomorrow, make it official in both Apache custom and territorial law. For now, You'll come with us. Emma was given 10 minutes to gather what little remained of her possessions. She filled a single canvas bag with clothes, her mother's Bible, and the small pistol her brother had carried, hidden at the bottom where no one would see. As they rode away from the homestead, Emma looked back once. Then she forced herself to face forward. Whatever was coming, she'd survive it. She'd survived everything else. But she had no idea just how much worse things could get. The Apache camp sprawled across a canyon hidden from any marked trail. A mix of traditional wickiups and stolen army tents created a settlement that looked temporary but felt deeply rooted. People stopped what they were doing to watch as the riders entered. Emma felt every eye on her. Hostility radiated from some faces, curiosity from others, and from a few, mostly women, something that might have been pity. They stopped outside a larger wickiup near the center of camp. An elderly woman emerged, her face a map of wrinkles and hard-earned wisdom. "This is Nalin," Aldridge said. "She'll prepare you for the ceremony." Naltz dismounted and spoke rapidly to Nalin in Apache. The old woman's expression never changed, but she nodded and gestured for Emma to follow. Inside the wickiup, Nalin pointed to a pile of clothing. Traditional Apache dress, deerskin, beaded, clearly made for ceremony. Then she pointed to a basin of water and made washing gestures. "I can wash myself," Emma said. Nalin studied her for a long moment, then spoke in broken English. "You marry warrior tomorrow. You represent his honor now. You will be clean. You will be proper. Or you shame him and he kill you." The bluntness was almost refreshing after Aldridge's false courtesy. Emma washed with the cold water, changed into the clothing, which fit surprisingly well, and sat while Nalin braided her copper hair with leather ties and small bone ornaments. "Why?" Emma finally asked. "Why does he have to marry me at all? Why not just, I don't know, make me work or hold me prisoner?" Nalin's weathered hands paused in her hair. "Council says blood debt must be paid with blood or bond. Marriage is bond. You become Apache through him, his responsibility, his burden." "And he doesn't want this," Emma said. It wasn't a question. "No warrior wants white wife," Nalin replied flatly. "White people bring death, disease, broken promises. Naltz lost many family to white soldiers. Now council forces him to take enemy into his home. He is angry." "So am I," Emma whispered. Nalin resumed braiding. "Good. Anger keeps you alive. Tears make you weak." That night, Emma lay on a pile of blankets in Nalin's wickiup, staring at the smoke hole above and listening to the sounds of camp. Voices in Apache, occasional laughter, dogs barking, the eternal wind. Tomorrow she'd be married to a man who despised her, trapped for a year in a camp where she was the enemy. All because her bastard father couldn't control his trigger finger. Emma touched the hidden pistol beneath her blankets. 6 bullets. She'd need to save them for when they mattered most. Sleep came in fragments, broken by nightmares of fire and graves and cold dark eyes judging her. Dawn came too soon. The ceremony was brief and brutal in its efficiency. No flowers, no music, no pretense of celebration. Just words spoken in Apache while Emma stood beside Naltz, both of them rigid as carved wood. Captain Aldridge watched with satisfaction, along with a small gathering of tribal elders and warriors. Emma caught glimpses of the women standing farther back, watching, evaluating, some whispering behind their hands. When it was done, Naltz grasped Emma's wrist. Not gently, but not violently either, and led her away from the gathering toward a wickiup set slightly apart from the others. Inside was sparse. Sleeping furs. Weapons hung on the framework. A small fire pit. No decoration. No softness. Nothing that suggested this was meant to be a home rather than a military outpost. Naltz pointed to the far side of the space. "You sleep there. Do not touch my weapons. Do not leave camp without permission. When I speak, you listen. When I am gone, you work with the women." "And when the year is over?" Emma asked. "Then you leave and I forget you existed," Naltz replied coldly. He grabbed his bow and quiver. "I go hunt. You stay." He left without looking back. Emma stood alone in the wickiup, surrounded by the belongings of a man who saw her as punishment, in a camp full of people who saw her as the enemy. She should have felt despair. Instead, she felt something harder, more useful: determination. 1 year. She could survive 1 year of anything. She just didn't know yet that survival would require becoming someone entirely different. The women came for her that afternoon. 5 of them, led by a younger woman named Itza, who spoke decent English. They didn't introduce themselves. They simply gestured for Emma to follow and led her to where several women worked scraping hides. Itza thrust a scraping tool into Emma's hands. "You work." Emma had helped her mother with tanning before, years ago. Her hands remembered the motion even if the technique was slightly different. She worked quietly, aware of eyes constantly assessing her. After an hour, Itza spoke again. "You know this work?" "My mother taught me," Emma replied. "Before she died." One of the older women said something in Apache. Itza translated. "She says white women are usually useless, soft hands and weak backs." "I'm not most white women," Emma said, continuing to scrape without looking up. By sunset, her hands were raw and her back ached, but she'd kept pace with the others. As they gathered tools, Itza spoke again, this time without the harsh edge. "You are blood price wife, yes, for the elder killed?" Emma nodded. "Naltz's uncle," Itza continued. "Good man. Wise. Your father shot him in the back while he carried no weapon." "I know," Emma said quietly. "And I'm sorry. But I didn't pull that trigger." "No," Itza agreed. "But you pay the price anyway. That is how the world works." That night, Emma prepared a simple meal from the supplies in the wickiup: dried meat, some kind of ground corn cakes, water. When Naltz returned at dusk, he found food waiting. He paused in the doorway, surprise flickering across his features, before his face hardened again. He ate in silence, never acknowledging her presence. Emma ate her own portion, then lay down on her designated furs on the opposite side of the space. "Why do you not cry?" Naltz's voice came unexpectedly from the darkness. "White women always cry." "Would it change anything?" Emma asked. Silence. Then, "No." "Then why waste the water?" She thought she heard something that might have been a surprised exhale. Not quite a laugh. But not hostility either. The days that followed fell into a pattern. Emma worked with the women, learning their methods for preparing food, making clothing, preserving meat. Her hands grew calloused. Her back grew stronger. And slowly, very slowly, the women's hostility shifted to grudging acceptance. Naltz remained distant. He came and went like a ghost, speaking only when necessary, treating her like an unwanted piece of furniture that simply existed in his space. But Emma noticed things. Small things. He always left enough firewood for her. When she tore her dress on thorns, new fabric appeared beside her furs without comment. Once, when another warrior entered the wickiup uninvited and made Emma uncomfortable, Naltz's voice cut through the space like a blade, and the man left immediately. He didn't want her there. But he wouldn't let her be harmed. It wasn't kindness. Emma understood that. It was responsibility. She was his burden, and Apache culture demanded he bear that burden honorably. 3 weeks into her captivity, because that's what it was, marriage certificate or not, Emma made her first real mistake. She'd been gathering water from the stream when she spotted something in the distance. A rider, alone, moving fast along the ridge. White man, by the look of the horse and saddle. Without thinking, Emma raised her hand to wave. A hand clamped over her mouth from behind. She was yanked backward against a hard chest, Naltz's voice harsh in her ear. "Quiet. Do not move." The rider passed without seeing them. When he was gone, Naltz spun Emma around, fury blazing in his eyes. "You try to signal? To escape?" "No, I saw someone and I—" "You risk the entire camp." Naltz's voice was low but vibrating with rage. "That rider was cavalry scout. If he saw white woman here, he brings soldiers. They burn the camp. Kill children. You understand nothing." Emma's heart hammered. I'm sorry. I didn't think. No, you did not think. He grabbed her arm, not gently this time, and pulled her back toward camp. You are not guest here. You are prisoner who walks free only because council shows mercy. You forget this again. Mercy ends. He left her at the wickiup and disappeared. Emma sank onto her furs, shaking. Not from fear of Naltz, but from the realization of how close she'd come to destroying everything. These people were hiding, surviving, and she'd almost given them away with one thoughtless gesture. That night, Emma lay awake, listening to the camp settle into uneasy sleep, and understood something crucial. This wasn't about her anymore. Whatever happened here affected everyone. And if she wanted to survive the year, she needed to stop thinking like a captive and start thinking like, what? One of them. The thought was disturbing and necessary. When Naltz returned near midnight, Emma was still awake. I'm sorry, she said into the darkness. Truly. I understand what I risked. Silence. Then, you do not understand. But maybe you begin to. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't execution either. 2 days later, everything changed again. Captain Aldridge returned to camp with news. Emma was gathering firewood when she saw him ride in with 2 Apache warriors and another white man. Older, dressed in expensive Eastern clothes that looked absurd in the desert. The camp gathered as the visitor was brought before the council elders. Emma stayed back, trying to be invisible, but Aldridge spotted her and gestured her forward. Miss Clark, or should I say, Mrs. Naltz now. Come, I want you to meet someone important. The older man studied Emma with calculating eyes. James Thornhill, he introduced himself. Federal Indian Affairs Office. I'm here to discuss relocation terms with the tribe. Emma's blood went cold. Relocation meant reservations, meant death by slow starvation and disease. What does that have to do with me? She asked. Nothing, really, Thornhill replied. I was just curious to see the white woman who chose to marry Apache rather than face justice. Captain Aldridge has been telling me your rather unique story. I didn't choose anything, Emma said flatly. No? Thornhill's eyebrows rose. You could have chosen death. Instead, you chose this. That's a choice, Miss Clark. And it makes you interesting. The council meeting lasted hours. Emma wasn't allowed inside, but she could see Naltz through the entrance, translating between the elders and the white officials. His face was a mask, revealing nothing. When it finally ended, the atmosphere in camp was dark as thunderclouds. Naltz found Emma at their wickiup. Pack your things. What? Why? Council agreed to meet Thornhill at Fort Bowie in 2 weeks to discuss treaty terms. I must go as translator. You come too. But I don't. You are my wife, Naltz interrupted. In Apache custom and white law. If you stay here without me, some will see you as... He paused, searching for words. Easy target. If you come, you are protected. No choice. They left at dawn with a small group, 4 warriors, 2 elders, and Emma. The journey to Fort Bowie took 3 days of hard riding. Emma had been on a horse before, but not like this. Not for hours under brutal sun, rationing water, sleeping on hard ground. By the second night, every muscle screamed. Naltz noticed her struggling to dismount. Without a word, he grasped her waist and lifted her down. Tomorrow is worse, he said. You need to be stronger. I'm trying, Emma replied through gritted teeth. Try harder. But that night, he positioned his bedroll closer to hers than necessary. When the temperature dropped, she woke to find an extra blanket covering her. She never mentioned it. Neither did he. Fort Bowie loomed like a brown scar against red earth. Soldiers lined the walls, watching the Apache delegation with hands on rifles. Emma felt their stares intensify when they spotted her, a white woman riding with Indians. They were given quarters in a building separate from the main fort. Emma shared a small room with one of the elders' wives, while the men stayed in an adjacent space. That night, Aldridge appeared at Emma's door with a bottle of whiskey and that same false smile. "How are you holding up, Miss Clark? Must be quite an ordeal, living among savages these past weeks." "They're not savages," Emma said. "Of course not," Aldridge replied, his tone suggesting he thought exactly the opposite. "I just wanted to check on you, make sure you're coping." Something in his manner set Emma's instinct screaming. "I'm fine, thank you for your concern." She tried to close the door. Aldridge's boot stopped it. "You know," he said, voice dropping lower, "once these treaty negotiations are complete, there will be opportunities for those who helped facilitate cooperation. Financial opportunities, freedom opportunities." "I don't understand." "Sure you do," Aldridge said, pushing into the room. "You help me convince the Apache to accept the relocation terms. I make sure your marriage bond gets overlooked. You could be on a stage east within a month, with enough money to start fresh somewhere civilized." Emma backed up. "Get out. Don't be stupid, girl. You think these people care about you? Your blood price. The moment that year's up, they'll toss you aside like used goods. Take my offer. Help yourself." "I said get out." Aldridge's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake. I'm offering you an escape." "From what?" "You're the one who forced me here. I gave you a choice between life and death. You chose life. Now I'm giving you another choice. Between freedom and wasting away in poverty with people who will never accept you. Think about it." He left. Emma sat on the narrow bed, hands shaking with rage and something else. Fear, maybe. Because part of her wondered if he was right. The next morning, negotiations began. Emma wasn't allowed in the room, but she stood outside with other women, catching fragments of English through the walls. Relocation, reservation boundaries, supply agreements. Thornhill's voice, smooth and persuasive, painting a picture of prosperity and protection. The Apache elders' voices, translated by Naltz, asking questions that revealed the hollowness of those promises. It went on for days. Each night, Aldridge appeared with new arguments, new pressure, new offers. Each night, Emma refused. On the fourth night, she was washing at the basin when Naltz appeared in the doorway. His face was drawn, exhausted. "They want us to move to reservation near San Carlos," he said without preamble. "Small land, bad water, no game. They promise food, but we know promises are wind. Council is divided." "What do you think?" Emma asked. Naltz looked at her, surprised she'd asked. "I think we are being herded like cattle to slaughter. But if we refuse, soldiers will come. Either way, we die. There has to be another option. There is not." Emma wrung out the cloth, thinking. "Aldridge wants me to convince your council to accept the terms. He's offered me money and freedom if I do." Naltz's expression went flat. "And you tell me this why? You want my permission to betray us?" "No, you idiot," Emma snapped. "I'm telling you because he's desperate. Which means the government needs Apache cooperation more than they're admitting. Which means there might be leverage you don't know about." Naltz stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, something shifted in his face. "You are. Not what I expected," he said finally. "Neither are you," Emma replied. That night marked a turning point. For the first time, Naltz began talking to Emma, really talking, about the negotiations, about the pressures on his people, about the impossible choices facing the council. And Emma, drawing on her father's stories of political dealings and trade negotiations, learned through years of bitter experience, started seeing patterns. Gaps in Thornhill's offers, contradictions in Aldridge's pressure tactics. "They need the Apache to move voluntarily," Emma said on the fifth night as they sat outside under cold stars. "If they have to force it militarily, it looks bad in Washington. There's pressure from reform groups back east. They need this to look peaceful." Naltz nodded slowly. "And this helps us how?" "Leverage," Emma said. "You ask for better terms, better land, guaranteed supplies, actual enforcement of promises, and if they refuse..." She paused. "You threaten to make this very loud and very public. Get the Eastern newspapers involved. Make them look like the bad guys they actually are." "White man's papers will not care about Apache," Naltz said bitterly. No, Emma agreed. But they'll care about a white woman married into the tribe, fighting for her husband's people. That's a story they can't ignore. Naltz looked at her with something new in his eyes. Not trust, exactly, but possibility. This would put target on your back, he said. Aldridge would destroy you. He's already trying, Emma replied. At least this way I choose which direction I'm fighting from. The next day, Emma did something that would change everything. She walked into the negotiation room, uninvited, and stood before Thornhill and Aldridge with her spine straight and her voice clear. Gentlemen, I'm Emma Clark. I'm a white American citizen, married under both territorial law and Apache custom to a member of this tribe, and I'm here to tell you that your current offer is insulting, inadequate, and designed to fail. The room went silent. Thornhill recovered first. Mrs. Clark, this is highly inappropriate. What's inappropriate? Emma interrupted. Is offering land with no water, no game, and no sustainable resources, then pretending it's generous. What's inappropriate is threatening military action if these people don't accept slow death by starvation. Aldridge surged to his feet. You have no authority here. I have the authority of witness, Emma shot back, and I have friends in the Eastern press. My brother worked for the Philadelphia Inquirer before he died. I know exactly which editors would love a story about how the government is forcing peaceful Apache bands onto death ground while pretending it's humanitarian. It was a bluff, mostly. Her brother had delivered papers, not written them. But they didn't need to know that. Thornhill's eyes narrowed. Are you threatening the United States government, Mrs. Clark? I'm offering you a chance to actually keep your promises, Emma replied. Make a real offer. Good land with water access. Guaranteed supplies for 2 years while they establish agriculture. And real enforcement mechanisms. And if we refuse? Emma smiled without warmth. Then I start writing letters. And we see whose story the public believes, yours or mine. The negotiation dynamic shifted after that. Not immediately, not dramatically, but enough. Over the next week, better terms emerged. Not perfect. Not everything the Apache needed. But survivable. Land with actual resources. Supply guarantees with penalties for government failure. Provisions for hunting rights on adjacent territories. The elders agreed. Barely. With reservations and conditions of their own. When it was done, Thornhill pulled Emma aside. You just made powerful enemies, Mrs. Clark. I'm getting used to it, Emma replied. The marriage bond still stands, he continued. You're bound to these people for the remainder of your year, and after what you've done, don't expect Aldridge to honor any agreement to let you leave peacefully. I'll take my chances. As they prepared to leave Fort Bowie, Naltz approached Emma while she packed. What you did was dangerous, he said, and foolish. You're welcome, Emma replied. And necessary, he continued, the ghost of something that might have been respect in his voice. Council says, you showed courage. They will remember. I didn't do it for recognition, Emma said. I did it because those terms were designed to kill your people slowly. And I've seen enough death. Naltz studied her in the fading light. You are not the enemy I thought you were. It wasn't much, but from him, it was everything. The journey back to camp took 4 days. Something had changed between them. Some wall had cracked. They talked more, shared stories. He taught her Apache words. She taught him some of the few Irish songs her mother had known. By the time they reached the hidden canyon, Emma realized something that terrified her more than anything Aldridge had threatened. She didn't want to leave when the year was up. But not everyone in the camp was happy with the new treaty, and not everyone was pleased with Emma's role in negotiating it. The night after their return, Emma was preparing the evening meal when a group of 3 warriors entered the wickiup unannounced. Their leader was a man named Goyakla, older, scarred, with eyes like flint. White woman, he said in broken English, you bring bad treaty. You trick council. Emma stood slowly, keeping the fire between them. I helped negotiate fair terms. Fair for white men, Goyakla spat. We move to reservation. We become prisoners. This is your plan. The alternative was soldiers and war, Emma replied, keeping her voice steady even as her heart hammered. The council chose survival. Council chose shame. Goyakla moved closer. And now you live here like you belong. Blood price paid? No. Blood price requires blood. He drew a knife. Emma's hand moved to the pistol hidden in her waistband, the one she'd carried since leaving her homestead, waiting for the moment it might save her life. This was that moment. But before she could draw, Naltz appeared in the doorway like a thunderstorm given human form. The conversation that followed was rapid Apache, harsh and sharp as stones striking together. Emma understood nothing of the words, but the meaning was clear. Goyakla was challenging Naltz's authority, questioning his honor, demanding Emma's death to restore balance. Naltz's response was quieter, but somehow more dangerous. Then he did something Emma would never forget. He stepped between her and Goyakla, putting himself directly in the path of that knife. "You want her blood," Naltz said in English, his eyes never leaving Goyakla's face. "You go through me first." The wiki-up went silent, except for the crackling fire. "She is your weakness," Goyakla said finally. "She makes you forget who you are." "She is my wife," Naltz replied. "In all ways that matter. You challenge her, you challenge me. Choose your path carefully." For a long moment, the two men stood locked in silent combat. Then Goyakla spat on the ground and turned away, his companions following. When they were gone, Naltz turned to Emma. "You should not have stayed here alone." "I thought," Emma started. "You thought wrong," he interrupted. "Some will never accept you, never accept the treaty. They will look for opportunities to strike." "Why did you defend me?" Emma asked. "I'm just blood price. You said yourself—" "You stopped being just blood price when you put yourself between my people and destruction," Naltz said. "When you risked yourself for people you owe nothing to. When you—" He paused, searching for words. "When you chose to stand with us instead of against us." Emma's throat tightened. "I didn't have much choice." "You always had choice," Naltz replied. "You could have helped Aldridge, could have stayed silent, could have left us to our fate. You did not." He moved closer, close enough that Emma could see the scars on his arms, the tired lines around his eyes, the weight of responsibility he carried. "I did not want white wife," he said quietly. "I wanted to hate you. Easier that way. But you make it difficult." "I'm not trying to make anything difficult," Emma whispered. "I know." His hand came up, hesitating, then gently touched her face. "That is the problem." The kiss was inevitable. Careful at first, questioning. Then deeper, as something long suppressed finally broke free. When they parted, both were breathing hard. "The year is not over," Naltz said. "You are still bound. When it ends, you can leave if you wish." "And if I don't wish?" Emma asked. His eyes searched hers. "Then that is different conversation." That night, the space between their sleeping furs disappeared. They came together with the desperate urgency of two people who'd been fighting attraction for too long, who'd been forced together but were now choosing to stay. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Naltz's arm around her, Emma felt something she hadn't felt since her mother died. Safe. But safety, she was about to learn, was an illusion in a world where men like Aldridge and Goyakla held power. The attack came 3 weeks later, in the dark hour before dawn when the camp was most vulnerable. Not soldiers. Goyakla and his followers, 6 warriors who'd rejected the treaty and Emma's presence. They came with torches and weapons, intent on burning out the white contamination. Emma woke to smoke and screaming. Naltz was already moving, grabbing weapons, shouting orders. "Stay here," he commanded. But Emma had learned enough about fighting and survival to know staying put meant death. She grabbed her pistol and followed. The camp was chaos. Flames leaping from one wiki-up to another. Women grabbing children. Men rushing to defend and extinguish fires simultaneously. Emma spotted Goyakla near the council lodge, torch in hand, about to set it ablaze. That building held the tribe's ceremonial items, its sacred history, its records. Without thinking, Emma raised her pistol and fired. The bullet struck Goyakla's shoulder. He spun, saw her, and charged with his knife raised. Emma fired again. This bullet hit center mass. Goyakla dropped. The fighting ended quickly after that. The other warriors, seeing their leader fall, fled into the darkness. The camp worked frantically to extinguish fires. Miraculously, no one else died, though several were injured. Emma stood frozen, staring at Goyakla's body, the pistol still smoking in her hand. She'd killed a man, taken a life to save others. The weight of it crashed over her like a collapsing cliff. Naltz found her there, gently took the weapon from her shaking hands, and pulled her against his chest. "It is done," he said into her hair. "You did what was necessary." The council convened at first light. Emma expected judgment, exile, perhaps execution for killing a tribal member. Instead, the eldest counselor addressed her directly through Naltz's translation. "You have spilled blood to protect our people and our sacred items. By Apache law, this makes you not just wife by law, but daughter by deed. The blood price is paid. But more than paid, you are now one of us, if you choose to be." Emma looked at Naltz. He nodded almost imperceptibly. "I choose to stay," Emma said. A quiet murmur ran through the assembled people. Not all approving, but accepting. That evening, Nalin came to Emma with a bundle of new clothing. "For daughter," the old woman said simply. The following weeks brought another change. The actual relocation to reservation lands. It was every bit as hard as Emma feared. The move itself brutal, the new land challenging, the supplies inadequate despite treaty promises. But together, Emma and Naltz working side by side, they helped their people begin building a new settlement. She used her literacy to document every treaty violation, writing letters to Eastern papers and reform groups just as she'd threatened. Some got through, some created pressure. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. But it was something. The year mark came and went unremarked. Emma had stopped counting days somewhere between the Fort Bowie negotiations and the fire attack. She was simply there. Part of the rhythm of camp life. She'd learned to track and hunt, to prepare hides and make clothing, to speak enough Apache to hold actual conversations, to understand the ceremonies and stories that gave meaning to daily survival. And somewhere in that year, she'd fallen in love with the man who'd started as her captor and became her partner. 6 months after the relocation, Emma discovered she was pregnant. When she told Naltz, his expression cycled through surprise, fear, and finally something that looked like cautious joy. "You are certain?" he asked. "As certain as I can be without a doctor," Emma replied, "which means fairly certain." He was quiet for a long time, his hand resting on her still flat belly. "This child will be born into a difficult world." "Every child is," Emma said. "But this child will be born into love. That's more than many get." "You could still leave," Naltz said quietly. "Find white doctor. White town. Safer for you and baby." Emma took his face in her hands. "I'm not leaving. This is my home. You are my home. Our child will grow up knowing both worlds, the best of both peoples. And the worst of both," Naltz added. "Probably," Emma agreed. "But they'll be strong. They'll have to be." The baby was born in late winter, delivered by Nalin and the other women in the traditional way. A girl with copper hair and dark eyes, a perfect blend of both parents. They named her Tehya, which meant precious. Captain Aldridge visited the reservation 3 weeks later, ostensibly checking on supply delivery. When he saw Emma with the baby, his expression went through several complicated changes. "So you really did it," he said. "Went completely native." "I went home," Emma corrected, holding Tehya close. "This was supposed to be temporary," Aldridge said. "Blood price, 1 year, then you were free." "I am free," Emma replied. "Freer than I ever was in your world." Aldridge looked around at the struggling settlement, the inadequate housing, the thin supplies, the hard life written on every face. "This is freedom? This is poverty and suffering. This is family," Emma said. and dignity, and choice. You wouldn't understand. You threw away everything, Aldridge insisted. Citizenship, opportunity, civilization. I threw away nothing, Emma replied. I chose something better. Naltz appeared at that moment, taking his place beside Emma with unconscious protectiveness. The two men stared at each other. She's lost to you, Aldridge said finally. Lost to your whole world. Perhaps, Naltz replied. Or perhaps she found herself. You cannot lose what you never truly had. Aldridge left without another word. Emma never saw him again. Years passed. The reservation life remained hard. Inadequate supplies, corrupt agents, disease, and constant pressure from encroaching white settlement. But the community endured, adapted, survived. Emma became known among both Apache and white communities as a bridge figure. Someone who could translate not just words, but understanding between worlds. She used her literacy to fight for better treaty enforcement, wrote endless letters to Washington, taught children to read and write in both languages. Taya grew strong and quick, learning Apache ways from her father and grandmother Nalin, English and broader world knowledge from Emma. 2 more children followed, a son named Kale and another daughter named Shadi. The children grew up speaking both languages, comfortable in both worlds, but fully belonging to neither. Just like their parents. It wasn't an easy life. There were years when food ran short, when disease swept through, when grief touched every family. There were continuing tensions with white authorities. There were moments when Emma wondered what life might have been like if she'd made different choices. But those moments passed. Because she'd look at Naltz, teaching Kale to track. At Tehya, helping Nalin with traditional crafts. At Shadi, singing songs in both Apache and English. At the community they'd all built together through sheer will and refusing to give up. And she'd remember that she hadn't lost anything. She'd found everything. 20 years after Emma first stepped into that Apache camp as blood price, she sat with Naltz on the ridge overlooking the reservation settlement as the sun set fire to the western sky. Gray threaded both their hair now. Lines marked their faces. Their hands were scarred from decades of hard work. But when Naltz took her hand, the gesture was still gentle, still full of the affection that had grown from hostility through respect into deep, abiding love. "Do you regret?" he asked. The question he'd never asked before. Emma considered it honestly. All the hardship, all the loss, all the struggle. "No," she said finally. "Not for a moment. Even though you were forced here? Even though you had no choice?" "I had a choice," Emma replied. "Every day after that first one, I chose to stay. I chose you. I chose this life. That makes all the difference." Naltza raised her hand to his lips. "And I chose you. Eventually. Took me too long, but I got there." Emma laughed. Better late than never. Their grandchildren were playing in the settlement below, Tehya's children and Kale's, a growing next generation who would face new challenges, but also new possibilities. "They will have better than we did," Naltza said. "Maybe." "They will have what we give them," Emma replied. "Strength, resilience, love, and the knowledge that identity isn't about choosing one world or the other. It's about making your own world from the best parts of both." As darkness fell and stars emerged, they made their way back down the ridge toward home, toward family, toward the life they'd built from the ruins of forced circumstances. Emma had come to this place as cargo, as payment for someone else's crime, as a prisoner in all but name. But she was leaving, whenever that day came, as herself, complete, whole, exactly where she chose to be. And that, more than anything else, was freedom. If this story of forced bonds becoming chosen love, of survival against impossible odds, and of 2 people finding home in each other moved you, hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Tell me in the comments, would you have fought or adapted in Emma's place? Could you have forgiven Naltz for his initial rejection? And what do you think became of Captain Aldridge in the end? Share your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next story.